Welcome back to Explaining Everything, the channel where we break down the biggest questions in science, history, and everything in between. Today's question comes from one of our curious viewers, Round and Found 24. Great name, by the way. Thanks for the suggestion. You asked, why is the Earth round? Now, if you've ever looked at the horizon and thought, seems pretty flat to me, you're not alone. But believe it or not, the Earth isn't some giant cosmic pancake. It's a sphere. Well, mostly a sphere. So, if you've ever wondered why planets don't come in fun shapes like cubes or pyramids, stick around as we unravel the science behind our round but slightly lumpy planet. Right here on Explaining Everything. Let's start with the big reason. Gravity. Gravity is like that one super clingy friend who insists on pulling everyone in for a group hug, whether they like it or not. It pulls equally in all directions, and when something gets big enough, like a planet, it shapes itself into a sphere. That's because a sphere is the most efficient shape for distributing all that gravitational force evenly. If the Earth were a cube, the corners would have weird gravity issues, and water would pool in the middle, while people at the edges would feel like they were constantly walking uphill. Not exactly ideal living conditions. Now, some of you might be thinking, okay, but Earth isn't perfectly round. It has mountains, valleys, and all sorts of weird land features. And that's true. If Earth were a perfect sphere, that would actually be a little concerning. It would mean something very strange was going on, like an intergalactic marble tournament. But even with mountains and valleys, Earth is still very close to a sphere. If you shrank Earth down to the size of a billiard ball, it would actually be smoother than one. Even Mount Everest, the tallest mountain in the world, is tiny compared to the planet's size, like a tiny bump on a basketball. But what about the horizon? If Earth is round, why does it look flat when you look out into the distance? Well, that's because Earth is huge. Imagine you're an ant walking on a basketball. From your perspective, the surface looks completely flat. You'd have no way of knowing it's round unless you zoomed out. The same thing happens with Earth. Unless you get up high, like in a plane, a weather balloon, or, space. The curve is too gradual to notice with the naked eye. Speaking of ancient discoveries, let's talk about one of the first people to prove the Earth was round, Eratosthenes. Back in 240 BC, this Greek scholar noticed something interesting. At noon, in one city, a stick cast no shadow. But in another city, at the same time, a stick did cast a shadow. If the Earth were flat, this wouldn't happen. The only way to explain it was if Earth was curved, causing the sun's light to hit different places at different angles. With just some sticks and basic math, Eratosthenes calculated Earth's circumference, and he got it almost exactly right. Not bad for a guy working with nothing but sunlight and geometry. Another classic way to see Earth's roundness is by watching ships sail away. Ever notice how the bottom of a ship disappears first, followed by the sails? That's because the ship is moving over the curve of the Earth. If the Earth were flat, the entire ship would just get smaller in the distance, like a bad PowerPoint animation. But instead, it vanishes from the bottom up, proving that the surface is curved. Now let's take it up a notch. Literally. Space. This is where things get really obvious. We have thousands of pictures and videos of Earth taken from space, and guess what? Every single one shows a round planet. If that were all fake, NASA would have to be running the most elaborate CGI scam in history. And considering how often humans accidentally leak spoilers for TV shows, it's safe to say that secret would have been exposed by now. And let's not forget astronauts. People have gone to space, orbited Earth, and looked down at our beautiful round home. The International Space Station orbits Earth every 90 minutes, and they see the curvature all the time. If you think every astronaut is in on some grand conspiracy, then I admire your commitment to skepticism. But I've got bad news. It's just physics. Now, let's address a weird argument some people bring up. If the Earth is round, why don't we feel like we're walking on a ball? Well, gravity again. It pulls everything toward the center evenly, so no matter where you are on the planet, down always feels like down. The force of gravity doesn't care if you're in Canada or Australia. It's working the same way for everyone. If the Earth were flat, gravity would pull everything toward the center of the disk, meaning people on the edges would feel like they were constantly walking at an angle. Water would behave strangely, and flying in a straight line would be nearly impossible. Another fun fact, Earth isn't just round, it's actually slightly squished. It's called an oblate spheroid, meaning it's wider at the equator and slightly flattened at the poles. That's because of Earth's rotation. As it spins, the centrifugal force causes the middle to bulge out a little. It's like when you spin pizza dough in the air, it stretches outward. So technically, Earth isn't a perfect sphere. It's more like a slightly chubby one. So, let's recap. Gravity pulls everything into a sphere because that's the most efficient shape. Mountains and valleys don't change the overall roundness of Earth. The horizon looks flat because Earth is huge, but you can see the curve from high altitudes. Ships disappear over the horizon from the bottom up, proving curvature. Ancient Greeks figured it out with shadows and sticks. Astronauts literally see the round Earth from space. And finally, gravity works in a way that wouldn't make sense if the planet were flat. At this point, if you still think the Earth is flat, I have some follow-up questions, like where exactly is the edge? And why hasn't Elon Musk tried to sell tickets to it? But for the rest of us, we can sleep peacefully, knowing we're rolling through space on a big, beautiful, slightly squished, but definitely round planet. Unless... nah. If you enjoy this video, or if you're not a flat earther anymore, please like and subscribe. Also, if you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for tuning in, and join us next time here in the channel that answers all the why, what, who, where, and how questions you've always wondered about, here on Explaining Everything.